Guys, you got to stick with the Houston Texans through the highs and the lows. The Houston Texans suspend Denico Autry for 6 games. How can Houston replace his productivity? And our top takeaways 10 days into training camp. You don't want to miss it.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. Please do us 3 favors: subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And shout out to our everydayers from the Himalayas coming back to listen to Cody and myself talk Texans. I am your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. And if you guys haven't seen the news, I am laughing because now when I introduce Cody Davis, it won't be Sports Illustrated. It will be Detroit News.
Yes, sir.
Detroit News is on. Still Texans credential media member, Cody Davis. And I'm going to let you, do the honors, Cody, really quick. I do want to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase.
Yeah, and before we dive into this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans, I do want to let all of our listeners and viewers know that I am leaving the Houston Texans beat. I am going to Detroit. Well, hold on. In the words of LeBron James, I decided to take my talents to Detroit and join the Detroit News. I will be covering the Detroit Pistons, guys. And look, I know some of you guys are going to hear this and see this and, probably thinking, what does this mean for the show? As of right now, me and John truly don't know. All we know is, as of right now, at least for the next month, the flow of the show will not change. We're still going to be coming on this show for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, giving you guys everything that we got to offer for the Houston Texans. But I can't deny, with me taking this new opportunity that God has truly blessed me with, so much. And I truly want to take time right now to say thank you, Jesus, for this opportunity. But, with this opportunity, there will be changes come the regular season. Once again, we don't know what that's going to look like, but I guarantee you, regardless of what happens with the podcast, first and foremost, John isn't going anywhere. John is definitely going to still be in Houston, still providing you guys all types of updates and everything regarding the Houston Texans, and probably more inside stuff, because it seems like he's going to have his foot inside of NRG Stadium more so. But as for me, we are working on things behind the scenes, and as soon as we come up with a solution, we'll let you guys know. But enough of that sad stuff that I don't like, that I don't want to be a part of. We are here to talk Houston Texans because on Thursday, there is the first preseason game for your Houston Texans. So on today's show, we're going to give like a quick preview regarding some of the quick takeaways, some of the quick news regarding the Hall of Fame game that I cannot wait. Once again, forgive me for saying this. Forget the Hall of Fame game. I'm just ready for Saturday, the official Hall of Fame, where the Houston Texans have an opportunity to see their own Andre Johnson get inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that's what I'm more waiting about. But, I've been outside NRG Stadium, and Lord have mercy, Tuesday was probably one of the hottest training camp days that I've ever had covering this team. And yesterday also marks day 10 of training camp. We're definitely going to, look at some of the top takeaways through the first 10 days of training camp. But John Autry suspended 6 games for PED use.
Yeah, man. Just looking at the loss of Autry for 6 games, I think we must look at what he brings. Denico says it wasn't intentional, but he accepted his punishment. Says that it was due to a newly prescribed medicine from his doctor. Now, keep in mind this, guys. Last year, the Houston Texans had a blitz rate of 31.1%, ranking them 18th in the NFL in blitz frequency. So you're looking at Denico Autry not being in Houston for 6 games for a defense that doesn't blitz like other teams in the league, but they have preached getting after the quarterback, creating pressure. So when I look at Denico Autry and him not being on this team for 6 games, I think that is a loss. And I want to say that this is potentially a huge loss. So let me say this: whether his position is inside or outside, it's not so much the position, but the productivity, I believe, hurts Houston the most. That is a player who brings, in the last 3 seasons, 28 and a half sacks, a ton of pressures, a ton of QB hits, a versatile player who can line up inside on 2nd and 3rd downs or relieve Will Anderson Jr. or Daniil Hunter when needed. Starter or not, I believe he was going to be this team starter. Let me say that. As a 3-tech or 4-eye, whether you believe he was going to start or not, you're losing that. And that's worth, in some form, small or large, I believe, concern. Because for 6 games, you need someone to come replicate that. I don't think Houston has anybody on this current roster that can be as impactful as Denico Autry when playing both inside and outside, lining up over the tackle, shaded in, shaded out. For a full season, I don't think there's nobody else on this roster currently right now until I have an opportunity to see so. And I want to look at the games where he was very productive playing on the inside. The New Orleans Saints, 2nd and 8 this past season. On 2nd and 8, half sack, strip fumble, played at the 3-tech. 1st and 10, sack, came off a stunt from the B gap back inside. Chargers, 3rd and 3, sack, B gap. Panthers, 2nd and 7, B gap pressure, sack. Against the Houston Texans, 3rd and 3, B gap pressure, sack. 3rd and 21, B gap pressure, sack. Seattle, 3rd and 11. I want to say he was in the B gap, maybe 4-eye, kind of some similar, sack on Geno Smith. Colts, 3rd and goal, sack, fumble, inside pressure. Not to mention playing 66% of the defensive snaps. How could Houston look to upgrade or replace that void for 6 games, from a 6-game suspension for Denico Autry, guys? And honestly, the first thing I look at, cutting Robert Woods. I think that saves Houston $5 million from that move. It gives Houston flexibility to make an addition to that unit without too much jeopardizing other positions of need that they may look to upgrade once the preseason cut down is done. In case they need a safety net, they'll still have enough money to do so. And I'm also looking at potential replacements, but I don't necessarily want to get into potential replacements in terms of trades. Just looking at some of the potential guys or some of the guys that are on the market right now. And I'm looking at guys like Carl Lawson. I'm looking at a Shaq Lawson. I'm looking at a Ngakoue. But guys remember him from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Played on the outside, right? How can Houston look to replace him? I think that's a question to be had, honestly. We could throw a lot of these names out, but the fact is, missing 6 games for a team that's being coached by DeMeco Ryans that doesn't rely on blitzes as much as other teams in the NFL, technically at 18th, they're in the bottom half of the league, in a sense. They want to create that pressure using their front 4. He was brought in to help with that pressure. It's going to be important to not only try to replace that, but also make sure that you have enough depth for whoever is going to go in and kind of rotate in and out with a Fatukauzi, a Tim Settle, a Will Anderson Jr. Now, I'm not necessarily worried about the edges. Derek Barnett is here in Houston, who I think played well for Houston last year. Houston did sign Jerry Hughes a couple of weeks ago, so I look at him as a replacement. You got some of these guys on the roster like a Marcus Harris, right? But that is a big loss for Houston.
Before I give my take, here's what Coach DeMeco Ryans had to say about how the Houston Texans will replace the vacancy left by Autry and the loss of Autry himself. Hey, Coach, speaking of Autry, what have you seen from the interior guys that you guys have as of right now? Especially like
Yeah, from our D-line group, I think all the guys done a great job of working well together. I think with our D-line, it's a different style of play than most guys have played in different schemes. So it takes some time getting used to, right, our style of play, what we're asking guys to do. And they're coming along. Right? I see the group gelling together. They're working well on their stunts and their games. So it's really good to see, guys out creating that bond, working well together as a D-line group. When it comes to Autry, I think everybody knows he put out a statement. We stand behind Autry and his statement that he made. Unfortunate news to hear of the suspension. We were well aware of it, and we'll move forward. He's here. He can continue to work throughout training camp, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there in the season.
I think the Houston Texans will be okay when you take a look at the vacancy left by Autry. And I say that because, John, I think a lot of people, including myself when I first heard the news, got caught up in who is going to be the quote-unquote one person that's going to step in. However, I do believe the Houston Texans, when you take a look at the depth, more so how Coach DeMeco Ryans and General Manager Nico Collins went about revamping this whole D-line unit. We saw they put a lot of emphasis on fixing that position group. I think the Houston Texans have at least a handful of players that they're going to come together and make sure that they fix the vacancy left by Autry. And I'm a firm believer in that because day 10 of training camp, I looked at the Houston Texans off the defensive line, and I saw a defensive line that did not lose much of a step, plain and simple. It all goes down to two guys that I'm very excited for this upcoming season, Fatou Kauzi and, of course, Khalil Davis. It seemed like the Houston Texans had both of those guys on a rotational standpoint running with the first team. And like I just mentioned, that D-line did not lose a step. As a matter of fact, in terms of somebody like Khalil Davis, I counted him for sure one QB pressure, but I want to say two. He looked really good taking care of the interior. Plus, John, when you look at the games that the Houston Texans will not have Autry, I think they have enough talent up front in the interior line where they're going to be okay. Look at their first 6 games of the season: the Colts, the Bears, the Vikings, the Jazz, Buffalo, and New York. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think only one of those teams made the playoffs last year. And even when you take a look at the projected teams that could make the playoffs for this upcoming season, I'm only looking at 2. And one of them it will be led by a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. So I truly believe that the Houston Texans will definitely be okay with the loss of Autry. Plus, this gives him more of an opportunity to learn the system from afar, get more so in game shape. And by the time, and plus, I love this even more. When you look at the last 7 games, where things start to get serious, was that week 7, week 8 against the Green Bay Packers? Now you get an opportunity to add another weapon to this defensive front that's definitely going to throw some of these top opponents off. So I think the Houston Texans are going to be okay, especially when you take a look at the consistent development of Khalil Davis and the addition of Fatou Kauzi.
I do want to add this. You guys remember the first half of the season last year? There was a lot of talk about the pressures, but, in the building, it was we getting no sacks. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you remember how important both Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins were to this team getting after the quarterback? Mm-hmm. I do think that right now, for a team that doesn't like to blitz a lot, for a team that wants to get after the quarterback, for a team, in my opinion, that has a questionable secondary, can't really bank too much on a lot of those guys aside from Jalen Petrie. Pressure is what's going to help out this defense. And there is no other D tackle right now. And I'm a huge fan of Khalil Davis. I thought that it would have been great for Khalil to start opposite of Denico, but there is not another D tackle, inside or out, defensive lineman, that I believe can create that type of pressure from the inside, which is why I wanted to highlight what he was able to do last year in that inside, that B-gap inside technique. So I still think it's a concern, but what does help Houston out, they don't go up against some of the top NFL teams in their first 6 weeks. So, that's a saving grace. But Denico, when he comes back, he will be very much so needed.
And on the opposite side of the break, we will take a look at and break down the first 10 days of training camp and give our top takeaways.
Shout out to my man Carl Lawson on Twitter. Tweeted us today. Game time, family. Let's go. Texans versus Jags. First Texan game. I said, oh, yeah, you there? He said, oh, yeah, I'm lit. I'm super excited. Game time was super clutch to use. That's directly from a consumer. Guys, you do not want to not look at the Game Time app. It ain't about what everybody else is not doing. It's about what Game Time is doing. Game Time has killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time also takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, whether that is for the Texans, whether that's for Janet Jackson, whether that's for the Rockets, whether that's for theater, comedy events, no matter what it is, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying it, and your purchase is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans. So yesterday marked the 10th day of training camp. By the way, once again, it was the hottest day. John, I know last week when you was out there, it was raining on us constantly, but I think I will prefer the rain versus the heat because boy, it was one of the hottest and one of the longest days of camp. But 10 days in, first preseason game is on Thursday. John, from what you had an opportunity to break down what we have been talking about, what has been some of your top takeaways from the start of training camp as of right now?
Yeah, I know for me, on the lowest of keys, Noah Brown is going to make this roster.
Oh God,
I would be shocked if he doesn't. I think there's some good competition between. You said Robert Woods had better moments. I hadn't been out there to see it as of yet. I think there's some good competition between Brown and Ben Skowronek, who I think is has been able to make plays for Houston and good on special teams. But that's one of my takeaways. I also have loved watching both Jawar Jordan and British Brooks get an opportunity. So I think we're going to see a lot from them this upcoming Thursday, We're going to see a lot from the young guys. But I can't sit here and say, my number one takeaway has been Brevin Jordan. My number one because I think people were concerned after Dalton Schultz. Is it a flash in the bottle? Was that 75-yard TD just luck? What was it last year? But it's not. Brevin Jordan has really put that work in, and he's been having opportunities to be on first-team offense. You've seen him seal off guys like Will Anderson as a blocker. He has been, I think, for me, tremendous, and he's been one of the more camp-worthy stars of camp players for me.
For me, well, I got a couple. And, of course, everyone should know my number one. This defense is going to be top 3, plain and simple. Even with the loss of Autry, I still believe that this defense is definitely going to be one of the best in the league. So that's my top takeaway from training camp. But my second most important takeaway is Nico Collins.
Still
I understand.
One receiver.
Exactly. And I understand. Put it like first and foremost, another takeaway of mine, since we're talking about the receivers, we might as well combine this. CJ Stroud is going to have a variety of weapons to choose from. Forget each and every Sunday, each and every snap he's out there on the field, because there's moments where we already know who the big 3 will be. Ever since the start of OTAs, I've been raving about how well John Mechie has looked, rather one-on-ones, which, by the way, the move he put on Caleb Bullock today, and then double back and did it on Mike Ford. Lord have mercy.
Mike Ford has been having a rough training camp.
A very rough training camp. Hey, special teams guy, like you say, John. But you look at John Mechie's ability to get open. Then you also got to take a look at the fact that I truly believe that, look, it might sound crazy to say this for some people to hear this, but you really got to take a look at the fact that it's going to basically come down between Noah Brown and Robert Woods. And both of those guys, time and time again, whether they was running with the first team, second team, third team, and majority of that latter half has been Robert Woods. Even they have had an opportunity to go out there and make plays. And that's just the guys that we know about. Xavier Hutchinson has quietly put together a pretty impressive training camp as well. So I'm just looking at this wide receiving core, and I'm just thinking to myself, man, CJ Stroud will have an unlimited amount of weapons to utilize throughout this whole entire wide receiving core. And that's not even mentioning, like you just said, Brevin Jordan and the rest of that tight end unit, which, by the way, Cade Stover is definitely slowly but surely coming into the player that we definitely knew we was getting when the Texans drafted him with the first round. And look, the offensive backfield, yes, Joe Mixon has missed almost a week of training camp, a week of practice. However, once again, Dameon Pierce is slowly but surely getting back to the player that we loved back in 2022. But even with all that going on, the number one weapon, the number one target, the number one wide receiver is still going to be Nico Collins. I came on this show time and time again talking about how the defense has been in the Houston Texans offense behind on many occasions, making CJ and everybody else frustrated. But every time CJ has had an opportunity to go out there and make plays, 9 times out of 10, Nico Collins has been the guy that stepped up. As a matter of fact, on yesterday, CJ Stroud, I believe there was running, I think, a 2-minute drill. CJ Stroud had an opportunity to connect with Nico Collins in double coverage. And once again, Nico is showcasing, look, y'all heard me say this time and time again. I still consider Stephon Diggs to be a top 10 receiver over the past decade. Even with his talent added to this offense, you are still looking at Nico Collins, especially being 6'4", big body wide receiver. His catch radius is out of this world.
Amazing.
He is still, and by the way, I don't understand how he did not crack the top 100.
Oh my gosh!
And look, I don't want to turn this whole segment into justice for Nico or whatever the case might be, but there is no way in hell a guy who caught almost 1,300 yards, basically is part of the reason why the Houston Texans revamped their whole entire franchise over the past 12 months. Like, that young man deserves to be on the top 100 list. But John, once again, he is definitely the Houston Texans wide receiver. Another takeaway of mine, this is definitely going to be a redemption year for Jalen Petrie. I love how the Houston Texans are utilizing him at that nickel position. And you talk about another takeaway of mine. I know we talked about this a couple days ago, but I'll double back on it again. What about $18 million left in the salary cap space? They are definitely going to utilize that money to upgrade that safety unit. I love what I'm seeing out of Jimmy Ward, but you already know he has to stay healthy. I like Kellen Bullock. I think he has quietly put together forget quality. He has put together a pretty impressive camp. Just like I said when we talked to Big Sarge a couple of days ago on this show, if it's week 1 of the regular season, I don't want to see him be the starter. And I think that is like the only, put it like this, the primary position where I think they could go and explore the market and upgrade at that position group with the $18.5 million that they have. But by far the biggest takeaway, Nico Collins is still number 1.
And I'm going to say this, what's even scarier about Nico Collins is, to me, Cody, he looks quicker. He looks quicker. And he looks a little bit twitchier as a route runner in open field as well. And Nico is a guy that, when I look at Stephon, I look at a guy that 10 yards per catch at the end of the year average. I look at Tank Dell. Tank Dell can be up there between 13, 14 yards per catch, but Nico is a 15, 16, 17 yards per catch kind of guy. And you look at a receiver that can do that consistently, that's a lot of pressure on DBs. And also, if he continues to do that for the year, I wonder how many opportunities will open up for the other guys on this team. Because if he proves to be the number 1 target, we got to double team somebody. Is it Nico's? Or do you bank off Stephon's history? If so, will we see another version of him? Because you don't got to worry about being blanketed too much. You can just, kind of beat guys one-on-one. So to Cody's point, man, Nico is still this team's number 1 receiver until we see otherwise. And he's making plays doing so in practice. No doubt about it. The first preseason game is in a couple of days, guys. Let's preview it. Don't go nowhere. More Locked On Texans. The sports are almost back. We're about to get NFL Thursday. We're getting college soon. Olympics is popping. NBA will be around the corner. Cody will be in Detroit covering the Pistons. WNBA is going on right now, and Astro fans are they're pretty mad at Dana Brown, but the MLB is popping right now as well. This summer, before it ends, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone every day all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NFL. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. I think it's okay to have a quick conversation just about the first preseason game preview. No Caleb Williams, he won't be playing. I don't believe.
In fact, the Bears' whole starter's not playing.
Yeah. They probably got some offensive linemen they want to get out there, but no CJ. I assume we won't see
the whole
CJ.
Texans off. I would say the only starter who should play is Titus
Green and
Howard.
Pierce.
And Titus Green Pierce. Well, Pierce not really a starter based off the depth chart from yesterday.
Okay. Well, he will be. He is the starter right now because Mixon has been out. But I understand
if you want to go that route, like I think the only two starters that we should see is Green and Titus Howard, even if it's for one, maybe two series. But yeah, the Texans, look, it's just going to be a preseason game full of guys like British Brooks, Gerard Jordan. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing both of those names, but me and John cannot tell you enough how great both of those guys have looked so far throughout training camp.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's not necessarily just like great, even though I'm going to be honest with you, I think I've seen, more from British Brooks than Gerard Jordan. Now, again, take that with a grain of salt. I haven't been out there as much as Cody, Big Sarge, Jonathan Alexander, DJ. I haven't been out there as much as those guys. But when I have been out there, I've seen British Brooks pop off a couple of big runs. And so I'm anticipating, whether or not he can put that together in a full NFL game. I know it's preseason. I know it's a Hall of Fame game. And I know the Hall of Fame game is taken very lightly. But he's a guy fighting for a spot. He's an undrafted guy. I can't wait to see what he can do. And then, of course, here in Houston, the DNA of this franchise will always have Arian Foster. Arian Foster was an undrafted running back. So you always kind of want to see, like, can lightning strike in the bottle twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, aside from the running backs, I want to see Max Tooley. And what's my other linebacker name? The other youngin.
Hill?
Jamal Hill out of Oregon. I want to see those two youngins go at it, man. Just to see like what value can they have, because I look at guys like Mike Ford. Mike Ford hasn't had a good camp at practice, but he's a special teamer, right? But if those guys can give you value at special teams, is that a player Houston can move on from, right? Because they can kind of do it with what needs to be done on special teams, and that would allow Houston to maybe look at investing in that cornerback room if they need to, right? Looking at the safety unit, Eric Murray, MJ Stewart, Brandon Hill, who really needs to have some good moments, right? What are you able to do? Can those guys kind of do better than you on special teams? And does that give Houston flexibility to look elsewhere to upgrade that position, whether it may be by depth or moving a guy down maybe from a starter to a depth purpose to increase the talent in a starter role? So I'm really looking forward to some of those young guys. And, here on the Locked On Texan podcast, and we can't find a spot for you on the field, on the offensive defense.
Special teams.
We'll find a spot for you on special teams. So, just to see if they can, provide something in that unit. We know how much this team loves special teams. Frank Ross is, one of the better special team coaches in the NFL. Just see the competition for that group.
Really quick, out of all the rookies, I want to see Blake Fisher. And the reason why I want to see him, I just want to see how good he looks now versus what he would have looked if he did not get an opportunity to go up against Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. And I said it on countless times. He got his behind handed to him some days, especially the first 2-3 days of training camp. But I truly believe that it's moments like that that's going to make that young man pretty damn good in this league. And look, hopefully he gets an opportunity to sit back from afar, because the longer he sit back from the far, that means Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil are one, still doing their thing, and two, most importantly, both of them are still fairly healthy. But I want to see how much going up against two of the premier edge rushers this league has to offer on a daily basis, every single day, how much that will play into a quick, speedy development for that young man.
Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Y'all do me a favor, man. And of course, subscribe, like, and comment. But just go ahead and give y'all a favorite moment. Tweet Cody your favorite moments of Cody here on the show, man. Show him some love on Twitter. Y'all see the Twitter handle. He's going to tell you as well. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. The Locked On Texan podcast will not go anywhere. We are part of a great network, a great family, and we're going to figure it out. But right now, let's just all celebrate my brother who knocked down some doors and got to where he was meant to be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. I couldn't do it without you, my guy. I love you, big dog. Y'all just don't know. Me and John been rocking with each other, 2013, 2014? Man, bro. But look, like I mentioned, to start off the show, I really don't know what this means for me and Locked On Texans as of right now. But just so you know, you guys do have me for the rest of training camp. So John and myself, we're definitely going to continue providing coverage.
Once the regular Texans training camp,
inside Texans training camp still gonna be there, but once regular season starts, don't know what that's gonna mean for your boy. But regardless, man, I just want to truly say thank y'all for rocking with me, and for those of you who've been rocking with this show, ever since day one, you guys know how far we have come, especially myself. But look. We're going to be back tomorrow, the week after that, week after that, week after that, week after that, to continue providing you guys some of the best coverage on your favorite team. And please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.